everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have a nice sized group. We're here at the Northwestern Medicine Living Well Cancer Resources Kitchen. Beautiful kitchen. We love being here and cooking. This is the Being Well series, which is for people in the survivorship series. And our topic tonight is gut health and the microbiota biome. And I'm Nancy Sawicki, registered dietitian with Delmar Cancer Center.
And my name is Mary Zupke, and I'm also a registered dietitian with the Delmar Cancer Center. And welcome to those at home and those here. So this is the third week of the Being Well series. There are 4 weeks, and it's all about nutrition and survivorship and the Mediterranean diet. And as Nancy said, this is the gut health and microbiome. And next week we have cooking for 1 or 2. Which we have some great recipes to give you guys next week. So make sure to come for that. So let's dive right into what is the gut microbiome. And the gut microbiome plays a major role in health. And now we're finding out even more that it can affect our mental status as well as our physical being. So plants, animals, soils, oceans, they all have their own microbiome. The largest microbial population in the human body is located in our gut. And so majority of those microbes that live there in the human body belong there, and they help maintain our physical and mental health, as I mentioned. So we're learning more and more about it, and there's more research to come.
So there's growing evidence about the gut microbiota and health. You'll hear it termed interchangeably, microbiome or microbiota. But the microbiota is a community of normal bacteria found in the human body. 10 trillion to 100 trillion bacteria live in our gut, and greater than 160 are different species. So growing evidence that different microbiota species work together to benefit our health, possibly to help prevent diseases such as diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and cancer, and possibly the role in depression, constipation and diarrhea, irritable bowel syndrome, skin conditions, weight management, and possible cognition. So they're finding out it plays a major role in our body. Some research is showing a decrease in colon cancer risk and Crohn's disease. So then you talk about bacteria, the good versus the bad, and what to eat. So prebiotics are complex carbohydrates in the form of indigestible plant fiber. And this dietary fiber can only be broken down and fermented by the good bacteria in your colon. So prebiotics are found in food, and such as wheat, honey, barley, tomatoes, rye, peas, bananas, beans, and the list goes on.
So the fermentation process that Nancy was talking about that changes the prebiotics help change into the probiotics. We don't want to get too scientific here, but just to understand that during that fermentation process, there are short chain fatty acids that are produced. Those short chain fatty acids help lower the pH, meaning making it more acidic in the gut. And then that limits the bad bacteria. So there's bad bacteria and good bacteria in our gut. And we want the good bacteria, which is a lot of different kinds of bacteria in our gut. So the short chain fatty acids are present in the colon, and they help support that healthy immune system and help stabilize blood glucose and also cholesterol. So these, you can see the prebiotics are listed on labels like inulin, fructooligosaccharides, galactooligosaccharides, cellulose, and fructans. So prebiotics are the natural, undigestible parts of foods that stimulate growth of this beneficial bacteria. So just like Nancy said, it's that fiber that's not digestible anywhere except for the gut by the probiotics. So they use the probiotics, use the prebiotic fiber to have the good bacteria. It feeds those probiotics. It prevents the growth of the bad bacteria because of that acidity that comes about. It helps improve immune system. And then it also makes enzymes to help digest food. And then the gut microbiome after antibiotic therapy is also fixed by these probiotics.
Yeah, so to review again, the food sources of prebiotics would be vegetables, grains, and the complex carbohydrates. So when you look at this list, you probably heard us talking about them last time, that they're part of the Mediterranean diet. They're anti-inflammatory. And we were talking about, onions last time, like leeks and onions and scallions to include in your food. Well, here they serve as prebiotics. So you have bananas, onions, garlic, leeks, asparagus, artichokes, soybeans, whole wheat foods, but there's still more. Prebiotics feed the gut. So you always want to remember that pre is the food component and it meets up with the probiotic. So there's many fruits, vegetables, and whole grains that contain prebiotics, even apples, asparagus, bananas, barley, beans, garlic, onions, and wheat bran. You can also get prebiotics through supplements. We're not that big on supplements. We like you to get it from food itself because they're pretty common foods. Although there's no recommendation for prebiotics, incorporating adequate amounts of fruit and vegetables in your diet into your daily meal plan will help you ensure that you're eating enough. So that's the big push with the Mediterranean, is to keep half your plate vegetables and fruit, and inadvertently you're giving yourself some good gut health by doing prebiotic.
So what are probiotics? So probiotics are live organisms that are referred to the good bacteria. They are living organisms that can be found in foods that have undergone fermentation. So like pickles, for example, would be good as long as they're not canned. When they're canned, that heat kills that probiotic effect. So good bacteria are the same or similar to bacteria found naturally in our bodies. So the probiotics are already there, but sometimes they can be overrun by the bad bacteria. Live bacteria or yeast are good for your health and especially your digestive system, being probiotics. So probiotics are dependent on the prebiotics that Nancy talked about as their main food source. So that's another reason not to have supplements, because then you're not getting the fiber. Sometimes people ask us, can I take a tablet that would give me all my fruits and vegetables?
Yeah.
Well, then you're missing that fiber. So you're not getting the prebiotics. So then the probiotics don't have any food to help with preserving that good bacteria. So lactobacillus and bifidobacterium are also are well-known probiotics, and there are some supplements that do contain live active bacteria, so we will talk about those.
Yeah, and if you ever put on an antibiotic, like if it's, a really strong one, a lot of times the doctor will put the patient on a probiotic at the same time just to help that gut. But if you haven't, like day one to take a probiotic, you can check with your pharmacist on because there's a variety of beneficial probiotics for whatever's going on with you. So that's something to help, because otherwise you can get, some more side effects such as diarrhea, and maybe also including yogurt in your diet if you're on an antibiotic. So probiotic food sources, a good common one that's easy to get in your diet is yogurt, common probiotic food. And then other fermented probiotic containing foods include aged cheese, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, pickled vegetables, and tempeh. So you kind of pick and choose what works for you. But if you're like, I don't want to mess with these others, stick with yogurt. So if you had a container of yogurt and you sliced up bananas in it, you got the pre and the pro. Or, if you're making a dish with onions and asparagus, and then, maybe add, I don't know, aged cheese.
Like tonight, we adding yogurt to our soup.
Yeah, there you go. And then we've got the onions in the soup too. And then food sources of probiotics, again, it's yogurts, lactobacillus milk and cheeses, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, tempeh, kombucha, and pickles. And then, that Activia yogurt, if we usually say for people who are active in treatment, if they are struggling with a side effect of GI upset, we say not to have the Activia because it's got live culture and can stimulate the gut. But in this situation, it would be okay.
So what about probiotic supplements? If you're not able to eat, or if you need an extra supplement, there are a couple that we recommend. Align or Culturelle are two probiotics that have been recommended by physicians. the food sources of probiotics are very healthy and should be attempted first. Like Nancy said, yogurt is a great one with some bananas or berries, right?
Yeah.
Many probiotic supplements contain a combination of those strains that I mentioned, the bifidobacterium, the lactobacillus, but also the Saccharomyces. So we really recommend talking with your physician or dietitian to find out which supplements are right for you. And if you're, especially if you're unable to consume those foods. So when you're looking at different supplements to choose a supplement, you want to make sure that it's tested for humans and has live active cultures. Oftentimes that means it needs to be kept in the refrigerator. So if you're finding things that have been on the shelf for a long time, it might not have those live cultures that you're looking for. You want to look for ones that have at least 1 billion colony forming units. So 1 billion CFUs. And then a time release or a coated capsule may survive better because that protects it in the stomach from the stomach acid and it goes right to your gut. So look for the instructions if they need to be refrigerated, and then consider using products that have one of these seals that is shown here. But those seals do not guarantee that they're going to work. They just are kind of quality type things. So at Northwestern, doctors usually recommend different strains to be used in different concentrations, as Nancy mentioned. So you really need to talk with your professional, whether it's a doctor, the dietitian, or the pharmacist.
Yep. So how can we protect our gut microbiome? Well, once again, it all goes back to the Mediterranean diet. Like that's what we're promoting because it has so many health benefits. So, Mediterranean naturally has prebiotic foods. So eat prebiotic foods, the artichokes, bananas, asparagus, oats, apples, and the list goes longer. Eat whole grains because they're also prebiotic. Whole grains contain fiber and beneficial carbohydrates, which are digested by gut bacteria to benefit weight control, cancer risk, diabetes, and other chronic disease. And try attempting a plant-based diet. It may help reduce levels of disease-causing bacteria, such as E. coli, reduce inflammation and cholesterol. And then eat foods rich in polyphenols. These are plant-based compounds found in red wine. Now, we're not promoting that. That's a question for your doctor. But it is a polyphenol. Green tea, dark chocolate, olive oil, and whole grains, all in moderation. And they are broken down by the microbiome to stimulate healthy bacterial growth. So just by eating Mediterranean and getting your vegetables and fruit, all this works itself out. You're doing it. You don't have to be that careful with it, but it's good to know.
So we have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
How often should I have prebiotics versus probiotics or both?
I mean, I feel like daily you should get your prebiotics from eating your variety of vegetables and fruit. And I think probiotics, the yogurt, if you can work that into your diet, are good. And then try some of these other products as well.
We're kind of back to the variety, making sure you're getting a variety. You want to have some of those foods that have fiber in them every day, like the asparagus, and we're having carrots today and things like that. I agree.
Because it's not a complete list, what we were talking about with the prebiotics. The list just goes on and on. It's pretty much all your plants, most likely, and your whole grains all contribute. So then how can we protect our gut microbiome? So eat a diverse range of foods. So eat a variety. That leads to a diverse microbiome. Try legumes and fruits, which contain a lot of fiber. So I made lentil soup the other day and, experienced the leftovers for lunches, and it's really good. And that's something as a kid I didn't really care for, but try things again and get a recipe, and you put carrots in and I put broccoli in, and it's really good because we're getting into soup weather. And then eat fermented foods, like common ones would be yogurt, sauerkraut, and kefir. You see that in the grocery store. And then limit your intake of artificial sweeteners. I don't eat artificial sweeteners. Many people are sensitive to it. It gives you some GI upset, but I just don't want it to be a part of my diet. So there's some evidence that artificial sweeteners could stimulate the growth of unhealthy bacteria in the gut microbiome and make it difficult for the healthy bacteria to grow. So that's another reason to, cut down on them. Sugar can promote the growth of bad bacteria in the gut. sometimes back to the artificial sweeteners, they're making them so good that it seems like sugar, like they're sweet. But what that happens is it keeps keeping that desire for sweetness. And like people sometimes gain weight by using those because it makes them keep wanting sweet taste. So sugar can promote the growth of bad bacteria in the gut. This can lead to irritation in the gut, which could manifest itself as an autoimmune response. And depression is thought to actually be your body's response to swelling in the gut. So more to follow on that. I think it's really interesting that they're linking it to depression as well.
How to include both the prebiotics and the probiotics. We've given you some samples already with the yogurt and bananas. A stir fry is great because you could have tempeh in your stir fry, and then the asparagus, the onions, the garlic, kimchi or sauerkraut. I've noticed at the farmers markets now, there are some sauerkraut purveyors that are doing different flavors of sauerkraut. The canned sauerkraut is not going to have that fermented product. So you have to do like the jarred or something more fresh. Add barley to your soups for that probiotic effect, and then try artichokes in salads. Add onions and garlic to eggs, soups, and pasta.
And also with the asparagus, you don't have to eat it in a long spear. It's kind of fun to cut it up into little like 1/2 inch or 1 inch pieces and then saute it, and you can throw it into an egg dish or stir fry. It's kind of fun changing the shape and size of it.
We do have a recipe on the Living Well culinary nutrition section that uses chopped up asparagus in a salad raw, and it's really tasty that way too. So putting it all together to take care of the gut, the microbiome is really, affected by diet, and it really plays an important role in our health. At our last national nutrition meeting, they did talk a lot about, actually, I guess this was about a year ago, about how they're doing a lot of research in this area now. And one thing they recommended is having like 5 plant-based foods a day or 35 a week, which seems a little bit overwhelming. However, tonight you're going to be getting at least 5.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, just adding a variety. So adding beans, this soup has some croutons on it, and we'll talk more about it. But plant-based can mean grains, so it could mean farro or rice or any of those. And then fruits and vegetables, and also legumes. So any of those, but start trying to think of a way to get a little bit more variety, because a lot of times we do get stuck eating certain same food.
So like you mentioned, the stir fry, you can have some meat but more vegetables. Or if you make a soup, like even a chili, less meat but more beans and a variety of beans. It doesn't have to just be kidney beans. You can put black beans and some others in there. So that's the way of thinking, is less meat, but you can still have some, but then get the protein from these plant sources too.
And a healthy balance with a lot of variety. That's what's going to give us that good bacteria. Those prebiotics love all those different, the probiotics love all the different prebiotic fiber foods.
And we
So
like,
that-
I'm sorry, we like topping the soup or something with yogurt, because that's gonna get another way to give you some probiotic. And it was 2 times ago, we had a little yogurt on that shrimp dish. Yeah, and tonight too, you'll have it.
Yeah, we like it on tacos too. You mix in cumin and chili powder in your yogurt, put it on your taco. So really, that's what we recommend, getting a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and then the fermented foods are helpful as well. Eating with the season is a really good idea. However,
Prices are better too. Yeah.
frozen is a great option. So if you're getting frozen asparagus, right now, they're usually taking that right from the field and flash freezing. So the nutrition is very high. So if you want a variety, that's a good way to do it too. In fact, some of us do that in our home or with our gardens. We take our tomatoes, throw them in the freezer, and then have them in our sauce in midwinter, so we get that flavor. So there are a couple different options.
So we have a dietetic intern, Camila, if you want to come up. We had that question last time about lead in foods. And so our intern Camila did a little research, and we're gonna let her present now. Mary and I are gonna go over to the kitchen and get our recipe ready. So Camila, you can just sit right here and yeah.
We appreciate her getting on this topic so quickly. So she'll introduce the topic and give you some good information about it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Camilla. I'm a nutrition intern from Northern Illinois University. So in front of you, everyone should have a handout called Lead in Protein Shakes and Snacks. So there was a recent study that came out from the Consumer Reports website about lead in some protein products. So I decided to look at that article and summarize some of those findings for you on this paper. So just to start off, what does lead do to the body? Currently there is no known or exact safe level of lead exposure from any type of food. But it has shown that any chronic or long-term exposures from lead can be linked to immune suppression, reproductive problems, kidney damage, and high blood pressure in older adults. Current standards for lead, there isn't any current federal regulations with it. So for example, the Food and Drug Administration does not test protein powders, for example, before they go out to the stores for the consumer to actually purchase and consume. So in that study from the Consumer Reports, they listed some items of recommendations from maybe bad products to maybe not have, compared to okay products to have with some moderation. So for example, the top bad products that they listed were Naked Nutrition plant-based protein and Huel plant-based protein. At the bottom, you see the Quest chocolate, Orgain vanilla, and Intra plant-based chocolate flavor as a more okay product to have with moderation. So with those items, you may notice that there's a lead per serving for each, and there's a percentage next to each item. So this just represents the Consumer Reports level of concern for a serving size of that specific item. And they made this based on what's called California's Prop 65, which I will define that in the next slide, but that's just how they decided to make that range of recommendations, which is 0.5 micrograms of lead exposure per day. And the other side of that page, there was another research study that was done for like protein bars and snacks. So this was called the Clean Label Project. And it just broke down some trends that they saw in items presented as gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, organic. So that's just kind of the data that they collected from that research. And they actually found that kids' bars were consistently lower in heavy metals. So that was an interesting fact. In there, I also defined that Prop 65 that I had mentioned, which under the California law, it's just a label to alert the consumer of any product that may contain higher levels of metals or exposures to certain chemicals. So just the general consumer advice for this, with these research studies, they just found that generally some plant-based proteins had higher amounts of lead. Dairy was slightly lower compared to those plant-based that they found. Some advice is just to ask your dietitian if you're trying to add more protein into your diet. Should you add more like through the food, or could you add some shakes in your daily routine? And so that kind of comes in to like the fighting the lead with nutrition, where encouraging whole foods over supplements is just preferred in general. With the FDA and all the government programs, they mostly recommended increasing vitamin C, calcium, and iron-rich foods, since those help reduce the absorption of lead from general food exposure. I put the QR codes to each studies on the very bottom. So if you're tech savvy, if you're able to scan it, you can access both resources, and they also have the lists of all the items that they looked at.
So we're gonna do our recipe tonight. It's called a creamy carrot soup with roasted vegetables. So Mary will start.
Yeah, so we have a lot of carrots in here, so we're getting some good prebiotics.
And vitamin A. Yeah.
I did peel these and chop them up. And then I love using fresh ginger. It gives it so much flavor and it's really a lot different. That can change your whole recipe. So I highly recommend getting some ginger. If there's a big piece of peel, then you might want to just take your knife and peel it like that. But if it's not too, if there's not much peel on there, you can actually just, I'll do it right into this can. You can actually just grate it right into your dish and it grates the peel and the ginger and it's not that big of a deal. So, I think sometimes we think, oh, it's too complicated, I'm not going to use it, but it really is an easy way. This recipe just has you incorporate it in the oil, which I really like to do because then the recipe has the flavor all throughout if you start it with the oil, because the oil goes through the whole recipe.
The other
So-
thing is if you're in the grocery store and they just have big, huge pieces of ginger root, you can break some off and just take that. You don't have to get the whole big root.
Another good tip with ginger is just using a spoon and you can scrape the peel off really easily so that you don't lose much of the ginger. And then, so we put the ginger and we had onions in this particular recipe and the oil and we sauteed that all. And then we added the carrots and the liquid so that we would boil the carrots in the liquid. And the liquid I love is we use a little coconut milk, so that's going to be tasty. And then cannellini beans, which is one of our favorite bean because it's very creamy. Nancy and I like a soup that's got some texture.
Yeah.
So this recipe actually calls to puree it at this phase.
We don't like doing
But we don't
that.
really like doing that.
We like to see what the ingredients are in.
We like
Yeah.
having some texture,
Yeah.
so we're gonna leave it like this. And
Yeah.
then Nancy started
Yeah.
working on the next
Okay,
ingredients.
so we requested a big butternut squash. And so then you're like, I gotta cut this thing. So if you take a fork and just kind of do that around it, put it in the microwave for a few minutes until you can feel that it's softening. And then I just sliced the big rounds and I just kind of quartered it. And then I tossed it with a little olive oil and put it on a baking sheet and let it roast at like 450. But then when I took it out, I still had the skin on it. So I took a serrated knife and just zipped it right through. It was soft then, so it came off real easily. So then this is what, I put it back in the oven for a little bit. So this is the roasted butternut squash and it's wonderful. And we're gonna add it to the soup. And then we also had 2 big heads of broccoli and cut that up and tossed with just a little bit of olive oil, put it on a baking sheet with parchment paper and roasted that as well. So we're kind of debating, we might just put the butternut squash in the pot
Yeah.
and then just top it with a little broccoli. Are you guys okay with that? And then we also have croutons too. So we use this bread. It's like a sourdough bread. And then I just cubed it up and tossed a little olive oil, put it on the baking sheet, and then added the herb de Provence, which is a nice blend of like Italian spices, no salt added, and then black pepper. And I did use a little garlic powder too, because I wanted them to be a little bit flavorful. So I'm going to transport this butternut squash into the soup pot now. No. I got my little tablecloth tray. So I might need your help sliding it off.
Okay, the butternut squash is gonna give the soup another texture, which will be really nice. And you've got a lot of good fiber. Oh boy, it's really looking good.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a tool to measure it.
Okay, perfect. And then, the last thing that we have on top, once we garnish it, she's gonna add the broccoli, and then we also have some plain yogurt that we added some turmeric to. So very anti-inflammatory, but also gives it a little extra flavor and a little of the probiotics. And then we've got some green onions. So you can tell, I don't know if anybody was counting, but we have a lot of different plants in this soup tonight. which gives it a lot of good flavor. And also it makes a bigger quantity so that you can keep it in your fridge for a day or two to have it for the next
So
night.
I also added turmeric to the roasted butternut squash. Anything orangey, it works real well. You can't really taste it, but it's given some nice anti-inflammatory properties.
I really like it on broccoli and cauliflower. That's a
Yeah,
great
it's
way to
colorful,
do
yeah.
turmeric together too. That's a good combo.
Yeah, I think this is good. So-
Yeah, the butternut squash mashed up and gave it some good texture. And I think we're getting ready to plate it up,
Yeah,
so
let's
why
do
don't we
it.
do that?
Here, you want, I got a big spoon we can use.
Okay, so we're gonna put some in a bowl and show you how do we garnish it.
There we go.
There we go. So you can see the nice carrot chunks and butternut squash. And then we're gonna add the broccoli. Perfect. And then we're gonna add a little bit of yogurt right in the middle. And just a beautiful little,
And croutons.
oh, that's right, croutons. Yeah, perfect. So we've got a beautiful little dinner for you guys here. And I think it has a nice, beautiful colors and lots of good fiber and
Yeah.
pre and probiotics.
Yeah.
So for those of you that are at home, we hope you try this recipe. And for those of you here, we'll have a tasting.